Welcome to today's tutorial from the TwinSAFE department. Today we are looking again at the AX8000. Today we are investigating how you can realize one safety project for several AX8000 with partially different functionalities. My name is Martin Früchtel from the Product Management Safety. After some basic information about our today's tutorial, I will describe the demo system and the approach used today. And after the live demonstration, I will give you some additional information how you can realize different requirements. I give you an outlook to the next tutorial, and we finish again with a short Q&A about today's topic. As the goal of today's tutorial, we take an AX8000, we create a TwinSAFE Motion Wizard project for it, and we add some additional functionality which should only be used on one of our two AX8000s. As prerequisites, today you need a TwinCAT 3 version greater or equal to 4024.11. You need a TE9000 version greater or equal to 1211. You need a TwinSAFE firmware on the AX8000 greater or equal to 03. And you need an AX8000 firmware greater or equal to 0104 with the default module ID active. As mentioned before, we take a complete TwinCAT 3 solution with a standard PLC and an EL6910 to add our required functionality for today. For the hardware, we are using an CX for the EtherCAT communication and the standard PLC. We have an EL6910 as master TwinSAFE logic. The logic is talking to an EL1918 and our AX8000s, of course. We have a light barrier connected to the EL1918, and we have two AX8000 in the X2XX safe motion version for today's tutorial. As required safety functionality, we want one safety project for all used access, but we want to alternate one access with some additional functionality. If you have the requirement to use some different functionalities on AX8000, if you have very simple functional differences, you can use already mentioned multi-settings. So you can use one safety project and the differences, for example, in parameters or mappings and safe addresses can be configured via multi-settings. But if you have more complex functional differences, so for example, in our case, we don't want to use the hardware inputs of the AX8000 except for one axis. On that axis, those hardware inputs should give us an additional enable signal for channel A in our case, and that's not really simple realizable with multi-settings. So for this functionality, we use customization. So we add the additional functionality to a new TwinSAFE group, and this TwinSAFE group will be configured to be permanently deactivated. So in our case, we are using customization. Of course, you can always create, for example, a separate safety project, but in our opinion, customization is exactly the right procedure for this requirement. So now it's already time to start our live demonstration. We have our TwinCAT 3 solution, and in the first step, we start the TwinSAFE Motion Wizard. So we start the wizard, check our two AX8000s. We configure the feedback. In our case, what we call front AX8000 has multi-turn feedback. The rear AX8000 has single-turn feedback. And we only choose the default configuration because basically we only want an STO-SS1 solution with, of course, our additional functionality. We rename our project, map it to an EL6910. We check our safe addresses and start the wizard. After the wizard has created the safety project, we can now start to configure our additional functionality. After creating the safety project, we can start to add the new TwinSAFE group for our additional functionality. We call the TwinSAFE group enable group because we want an hardware input enable for channel A. And within the new group, we can delete the generated error acknowledgement, and we can reassign the error input to our target system error input, the drive request error egg. And then we can add our functionality. So we add a save mon function block. We rename our network to enable and our function block. And we start creating the variables for mon in 1 and 2, which should be our two hardware inputs of the AX8000. And we assign the monitor output mon out to a variable enable in the channel A variable list. Then we connect our channel A input 1 to our alias device target system to our safe input 1, the first hardware input, and the other variable to safe input 2 to the second safety input. And we want to use that enable signal to control the STO functionality. Before we do that, we change the TwinSAFE group order so that it's executed before our error handling. And after that, we go to the error handling of channel A, where the STO command is executed, and add our new variable channel A dot enable to the mon in 3 input, so that the enable is triggering STO if the hardware inputs are not there. After the basic functionality, we can configure the customization case. So we open up our new TwinSAFE group enable, and we configure the group to be permanently deactivatable. So we can use TwinSAFE 3 to deactivate the group permanently for those AX8000 access where we don't need the hardware inputs. And for the enable signal of the monitor function block, we can configure a customization setting, the replacement value. We set it to true, so as soon as the group is deactivated, that signal becomes true for the other TwinSAFE groups. The only stuff missing is all the links, so we connect the error acknowledgement and the run signal of our connection input group. And within the multi-settings, we do the same for the second configuration, for the rear drive in our case. And basically that was all for the AX8000 project. Now we can go over to the EL6910 project and add all the missing links to the connection inputs and outputs. So we go to the variable mapping and connect the error acknowledgement setting for channel A of the first AX8000, for channel B, same for the second AX8000. And of course, we connect the error egg request signals from both AX8000 for both channels A and B. In this tutorial today, we built us an internal global STO signal. So we have a variable STO global, which we connect to all missing STO and SS1 signals of the AX8000 connection. So that was all for the safety application. The verification is succeeding, so we can start the download now. For the download, we start our multi-download tool. We choose our 3 projects, the EL6910 and the other 2 projects for the AX8000. We verify the serial number and enter username and password and start the download. After the download is done, we have to verify the CRCs, and we can activate the project by re-entering the password. And if we have a customization configuration active within our projects, we get a new final page of our TwinSAFE download wizard, where you can see which projects have customization available. In our case, both the drive front and drive rear has a configuration we did for the customization. And in our tutorial today, we won't be using the hardware inputs on our rear drive. So we click on the customization button and we choose deactivated permanently for that enable group we created. And then we can finish up the wizard and we are done. So now our first drive has the hardware inputs available for the enable signal, but our drive rear only uses the FSOE communication without the hardware inputs. So now we can check the safety application. We are on the drive rear, and when we activate the online view, we see that the TwinSAFE group is deactivated by the blue marking of the TwinSAFE group itself. And we can also already see that the enable signal of the SafeMon function block is true. But to be sure, we go over to the channel A error handling, where we introduce the enable signal and see that the SafeMon function block shows a 1 for the enable signals, because that's the replacement value of the deactivated group. So everything is fine for the drive here. So we can go to the access configuration and we can start manually moving the motor, because despite the deactivated group, the enable signal is available and everything works as expected. That was all for today's live demonstration. We showed you the case that the customization is done during the download process, but we also have an additional button in the safety editor toolbar where you can start up the customization process. But if you have the case that you want a deployment or an update of your machine or some service cases without the use of TwinK3, you can also use the TwinSAFE loader. So we have commands available, of course, for the multi-download and also for the customization. So at runtime, even at runtime, you could choose that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday you want to use the hardware inputs, and Thursday and Friday you deactivate it via your custom HMI, which triggers the TwinSAFE loader in the background, for example. That was all for today's tutorial. Next week we take a look at primary and secondary feedback. We show you how you can create a safety project which uses both the primary and the secondary feedback within a safety application. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope we hear again next week with the next tutorial.